You're hot.
Thank you for joining us. My name is Jason Sanford, and this is Weathering the Storm, Creating in Times of Trouble. Our mixed panel of writers and artists are going to discuss the challenges of making art and stories during a pandemic, as well as strategies for managing health and trying to remain creative. So again, my name is Jason Sanford. I'm a science fiction and fantasy writer, mainly short stories. Been a Nebula Award finalist a couple of times. Have a new story in Asimov science fiction out right just a few days ago, came out. Check it out. It's basically vampire on Mount Everest going after tech bros. So it's something we can all get into. But I'm going to ask all our panelists to introduce themselves, and then we'll get going with our discussion. And if you have any questions, just use the Discord to shoot them our way. So Raven, do you want to start?
Sure. My name is Raven Oak. I'm a science fiction and fantasy author and artist out of the Seattle area. I'm also a disabled non-binary person, so my pronouns are she, her, or they, or them. I will do either one. And my newest work is a short story that just came out in the Great Beyond anthology that deals with disability and space travel.
John?
Which one?
Well, go with John. Go with you, John.
The first of many problems that our names are going to cause tonight. Hi, I'm John Wiswell, and I'm Blurry John, and I'm a writer of short stories and flash fiction, published in places like Fireside and Nature Magazine. I have my first story coming out in Uncanny Magazine later this year. And I am disabled and asero, and it informs a great deal of the way I work.
Great. Other John, sorry.
Hi there, my name is John Madai, and I'm a science fiction horror author, and I have stories in Escape Pod, Pseudopod, and I have my own podcast. It's called Triple Plus Ungood.
Ace?
I'm Ace Tilton Ratcliffe. I am also disabled, non-binary. My pronouns are they, them. I'm all over the place. I'm a mixed media artist. I'm a craftsperson who works in quilts, and I'm a writer. I tend towards the nonfiction side, but occasionally dabble in fiction. Just recently had a story in Fireside, so that was fun. So I'm excited to be here.
Great. And Amanda?
Very cool. I'm a fantasy and science fiction illustrator, also a poet. I've done a little bit of work across the board in gaming and also in publishing covers. I've done a little bit of art for Fireside Fiction. I won a Chesley Award last year, and today I found out I've been nominated for 2 more. So that's exciting. It's been quite a day. Cherishing moments like that. You can learn more about me at amandamakepeace.com.
Well, the first thing I want to throw out to everyone is, how's everyone doing during this pandemic?
Surviving. We're surviving.
That's how I agreed, surviving, yes.
Yes, there are good days and bad days. And today's been a good day. I think, for me, I try to give myself a lot of grace. Every day is going to be different. And I try not to beat myself up if it's a bad day and I don't get quite as much done as I want. I think a lot of us can probably relate to that.
Yeah, I'm learning to cope with the fact that I'm not going to get as much done as I'm used to, that this is a new and different normal. It's a higher stress normal. And for me, my bad days sometimes are outnumbering my good days, but that's okay. And it's, I think, that adjustment that a lot of us are going through as we're trying to deal with COVID.
Agreed.
And I've been doing shockingly close to normal. I've been immunocompromised since I was 13. A lot of the adjustments abled people have had to make over the last 5 months have been my normal for decades now. It's terrifying to see so many of my loved ones have to be put into the same jeopardy that I've always been. I'd rather, it wasn't quite so common. I'd rather we had governments that believed in science, but we play the hand we're dealt. It's for me, predominantly the big change has been trying to do more emotional labor for other people who aren't used to needing to delegate for themselves quite as much as they suddenly feel they need. And that works within the creative realm too. I've been trying to allot more time to cheer read, not beta read, but basically alpha read, to get behind people and help prop them up so that they can keep producing, especially as they're adjusting to a really unfortunate new normal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think similarly, in some ways, I feel like not a whole lot has changed for me. We've had a tough year with pets at our house. So my 14-year-old dog love of my life died unexpectedly in March. And then my husband, the dog of his life, died unexpectedly in April. And so I sort of feel like the grief was in some ways even more overwhelming than any of the COVID has been. So I've been struggling with that in some ways even more than this new normal of not being able to be out and about and my normal self.
John Madai, how's it gone for you?
It's had ups and downs. I actually started this year in China. I'd been living there for a year, and I was 400 miles east of Wuhan when the virus came out. And then my city was put into lockdown, and they're very, very strict with lockdown there. Of course, you could barely leave the apartment. Some apartments were even blockaded. Multiple temperature checks on the streets to go anywhere. I was there for a month in lockdown and didn't know if I'd get out. And it was incredibly productive. It was a wonderful time, actually. And I thought my visa was expiring in February, and my apartment I had to get out of it. And I was about to be, kicked out. And I was worried that I wouldn't be allowed to come back to the United States because Trump was threatening travel bans for Chinese nationals, but I didn't know if I would get through. And I was able to get out and come to America, and I thought, "Ooh, thank God." They didn't check me or anything at the airport. They just let me through. It was really weird. I thought that was odd. I thought I was expecting to be put into quarantine in Death Valley or something, and they barely lifted an eyebrow. I had to ask them to check my temperature, and of course it followed me here, and now you're all part of that, and I've had real ups and downs during this time period. It's mostly been incredibly productive, one of the most productive years of my life, and it's also been socially very strange. To be honest, I think having to connect with people through Zoom is just death. It's I think there's something very destructive about it. It's a great tool. It's also living death, but that's I might be wrong about that.
Well, I think if not wrong, at least deeply ableist.
How so?
Because that's a huge part of the ways that people who are disabled and are stuck at home communicate and can communicate and have to work and have to have our entire experience of interacting with people. And so I think to label this huge ability to connect to others as death is extremely, I think it seems to me that maybe you don't have very many disabled people in your life.
I guess that's a possibility. I understand where you're coming from. I do think it is very, very destructive. I understand, your point of view there. but ultimately, I think it's going to be ultimately, I am kind of against it.
I think we got that.
Well, let's move on from that. Speaking, because everybody was talking about how it's gone for myself. I work in the journalism field, so when all this hit, I was busier than ever for the first 3 months, and I was not writing any fiction. And I know that during that time, I saw a lot of people saying that, hey, you're isolating at home, so you must be creative now. You have to, if you're not creative, there's something wrong with you. I know, because we were hearing a range of views from people here. Some people were saying they were being very creative, others saying, their life is. So how do you react to that idea that, because of the pandemic, you should be more creative, or what's your reaction to that? Just, I'm curious from people.
It's not the first time that people who don't write oversimplify what writing is. I'm fairly used to people who don't do it not quite following that. In the first months of this, I had several loved ones have COVID. I did not have a sudden renewed ability to focus on writing. Mm-hmm. I was desperately trying to keep in touch with them and find out who could mind them and how to get them resources. The sudden emotional drain reduced my productivity. But I understand that that really comes out of a lovely fantasy. And I'd love to live in the fantasy. Don't get me wrong. That's if it was just stay home and don't be worried about anything. Well, that would my productivity would be a little bit better. But it's just a little bit more reductive than reality.
Well, there's a lot of, I think, fantasies when it comes to what artists and writers do and how that happens, like the process of creating something. And there's a lot of myths kind of behind that people don't really realize everything that goes into it. Not to mention that even under normal circumstances, we still have lives. We still have to pay bills. We still, if you own a home, there's going to be maintenance on your house, or pets, there's going to be care for that. I mean, there's a million things that goes into each person's daily life. And that's true for creatives as well. So, I mean, we don't spend, even under normal circumstances, we don't spend 100% of our day writing or drawing or painting. I understand. I mean, it's the same thing, with people that come up to me at conventions and like, oh wow, did you paint that? They're very mystified, I think, by art and by books. I mean, they buy a book off the shelf or on Amazon or whatever, and they have this tangible thing. It doesn't actually reveal everything that went into it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that's really true. They don't see the process. They see the finished product. And right. Especially in this world where it's very easy to see so much finished product. I mean, you can be so easily overwhelmed with the amazing confluence of media and artwork and right. podcasts and video that's coming out.
Right.
I think,
yeah. And they're flooded by it. I mean, it can be deafening just going on social media.
You've got a society where it's instant gratification. Mm-hmm. They're used to, because of the changing in publication landscape and, potentially art as well, it's so easy for things to get out there quickly that when things slow down, people don't understand that slowdown. They don't understand the stuff that's going on in the background that doesn't relate to them.
Right.
And so, for me, when I see somebody post something that says, oh, everybody should be creating more because, you're stuck at home, I think that's really BS, and it's ableist in itself, because that really depends on the person. I mean, my autoimmune system doesn't respond well to stress. And if I get COVID, I'm one of those people who will likely die. And so my stress levels are kind of doing the fight or flight nonstop, which means my body isn't up to sitting in a chair and writing every day. To say that I'm somehow not a writer or something because I'm not producing as much, no, that's not accurate at all.
Yeah, everybody's lives are different.
Yeah.
And we all have different circumstances and, different stressors and various things going on in our lives, including any of our own psychological stressors that we might be dealing with, or, mental and physical. So.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I write a story, if you want to see, if the actual time I sit down and write the story is minuscule compared to how much time I've, thought about the story or had to deal with things in my life that let me get to the story and all that kind of stuff. And, I really had a bad reaction to that. You're not being creative now. What's wrong with you? It's like, what's wrong with you for asking that? Because I mean, look at the world as it is right now. I mean, nothing is going like normal, but it's like the whole world is disrupted. But people were like, "Oh, it's time to create. It's time to write. Make your art." It's like, what?
Yeah.
Does make me bring up though. What do y'all have any through all this, or what have you seen for how to manage your creativity through the pandemic? Or is it possible to manage your creativity during all this?
Well, I think that, self-care is the main thing. We talked about that a little bit earlier where we were all mentioning how we were giving ourselves a little bit more grace, a little bit more understanding about the fact that we maybe had a bad day and didn't create as much. But I know for me, some of it's also taking some time and revisiting books and TV and movies that I've seen a million times. They're kind of that comfort food of media. Because it's something I'm familiar with, it doesn't take a lot of brain power and focus. So it gives me that mental de-stress and relaxation that I need. And yet I can also look at it as, oh, I remember that. That's a good bit of writing right there, which encourages me to then go, oh, I remember I wanted to write that story about da-da-da-da-da. And so it's kind of a both, get both cases out of it.
John, I think you're muted.
Yeah, I can't hear him either.
John, I can't hear you. Hold on, now you're unmuted now.
No.
No? No?
No.
I don't know what happened, John. It says you're unmuted. Sorry.
Can you type in your answer in chat and we can read it?
If you type in your answer, I will read it for you, John. Others want to dive into that? Managing creativity?
Yeah, I was going to say, for me, it is a little, well, I mean, I'm a poet as well, so there is some writing components to that as well. And I do think writing for me has suffered a little bit more than my painting and my drawing. I actually find a lot of solace in creating art. And so, I mean, there are days where I just want to put my headphones on and draw, and I don't want anybody to bother me.
Mm-hmm.
I just want I want the world to go away, and all I want to do is focus on this piece of art. And that actually, like, by the end of the day, if I have a day like that where I'm able to put aside that time, I feel, relieved. I feel pumped up about it. For me, the art has been a stress reliever. So for me, it's been very important to have that time. It helps balance everything out, I think.
John,
there's a quiet
back.
solace in art.
Yes.
John Madai, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I've been finding the same thing. On a day when writing isn't work for me, I'll turn to something else like art, sculpture. I'm living in a permaculture garden now, and I'm finding gardening, which I've never found to be one of my hobbies before to be big, and I'll turn to that for like a period of a week and then turn to writing, and it somehow gets back on track, which has been great. But yeah, this period has been really challenging. But when I looked at my output, like for the year, it's been one of the biggest years I've ever had, even though it doesn't feel like it from day to day. So I've been I've been both encouraged and a little distressed by how this works.
Hey, John, did your mic come on?
Oh,
wow. Hey, the tech, they just said use the test your mic function in Zoom. So if you click on video and audio settings, you should be able to give it a test. We do have a question from the audience we'll bounce to while we're waiting for John to try to hook up his audio. It kind of ties in with this. Someone asked,
speak and pause.
Wait, was that you, John? All right.
Yay!
Oh, that did it. Thank you, technicians. I don't know how I was cursed with silence, but I am happy to have broken the curse with your help.
Do you want to talk about managing your creativity? Then we'll go to the question from the audience.
Sure. You folks, I bet you touched on it while I was not on the call anymore, but I've been taking more emotional opportunities. Near the beginning of the outbreak, I had a wonderful conversation with the brilliant Maurice Brodus, who talked about how his productivity is not slowed down very much because he writes from anger, and he has a lot of it. And it has led him to produce many beautiful works. I think Maurice is an incredible writer. And I recognize that I actually don't usually write from anger. I often write from joy. And it made me start looking at my productivity during the pandemic, during the stress, when family needed to come move in here, and I wasn't sure if they could be tested before they even moved in, and that anxiety came in. I found that often I was in one of two emotional places. One, I needed to escape some kind of pressure that was going on. And one, I needed to embrace some kind of anger. And I can write to escape, and I can write to confront. And so I've found a lot of those emotional opportunities. And so, like in the last 2 months, I've written just a ton of short stories. And that has mostly been recognizing what opportunities I can give myself emotionally with the different work that I have in front of me. So sometimes I need to write to escape. So I've written like a very dorky academic paper about the Predator films, which is just complete escapist work. And then I've been writing some stories about abuse recovery that are about topics that I've lived through that I've never touched on before. Mm-hmm. But I've just been letting myself work in the directions that my emotions will let me do more than ever. So that's how I've been managing my productivity.
John, I got to say, I'm glad you got your mic working, because that was good. That was profound. Thank you. No, seriously. And we have a question from the audience that ties in with all this. I think, Raven, you may have mentioned self-care. And so the question is, what creations are you consuming that are helping you cope or helping with your own work? I know for myself that I have been binging on romance manga like crazy, and anime, and it helps. It really helps. How about all of y'all? Whoever wants to dive into that.
Nature. Yeah, nature is, well, I think nature has always been my go-to. And I do a lot of my fantasy and, well, okay, let me back up just a step. Before I actually began working in fantasy and science fiction, I was more of a fine artist, and I just did nature paintings. Okay. And a lot of that is still in my fantasy work. You know, despite some problems I have with my own health, I love hiking. And there's a few I mean, I live out in the country, and there's a few remote places where, you know, I can still go and there's nobody else there, which is real perfect. So, you know, taking a walk by the river, that's just perfect for me. You know, I can sit down by the river and just listen to the water go by and listen to the birds. I do a little bit of gardening. I'm better at gardening than I am with houseplants, but yeah, nature. I do have a few shows on Netflix that, you know, I'm watching. Right now I'm reading Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse, which I'm like in love with this book. I bought it months and months ago, and I guess, you know, my to be read pile, like everybody's, is probably insane. And I only just started reading it the past week, and I'm like, why did I wait so long? Yeah, books and nature.
Cool. Ace, would you like to touch on this?
You know, I've been pretty much, I feel like there's not a whole lot of time. I mean, when I'm out doing walking or kind of tending to the honeybees, those are times when I'm not consuming media, but pretty much every other moment that I'm awake and breathing, I'm consuming media. So audiobooks have been really big for me. And I have like 4 library cards from all different places that I've lived. So I've been tearing through memoirs. Right now I'm reading The City We Became, which I'm obsessed with. It's the coolest story concept ever. It's awesome. Like, what?
One of the best novels of the
It's so
year.
good. Yeah, it's one of those ones where I'm torn between sitting down and just like finishing it in one sitting, but also I just keep wanting to read it in like little teeny bits so that I get to just hoard the little pieces of it. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. And podcasts have been really big for me. Imaginary Worlds is one that deals with science fiction and fantasy a lot, and I love that.
I have been reading quite a bit, but one of the things I actually did, because art was feeling more therapeutic for me than writing at the moment. You know, I'm writing shorter works, but where I'm kind of allowing my brain to go and focus so that I can write what I can. I started a webcomic. And so it's a science fiction webcomic that I'm creating, that the main characters are my cats. And let's just say the cats aren't from Earth. And I'm having a lot of fun with that because it's something I'm creating, but it's not something I've ever created before. It's different. And it allows my brain that break that it needs. And reading wise, I've gotten back into reading some cozy mysteries that involve cats because they're fun and they're fluff and I don't have to think. And there's cats.
Either John?
I'll go. Yeah, I don't know why, but ever since the beginning of this thing, I've had a hard time consuming fiction, and I love fiction, and I'm a ravenous consumer of pop culture, but I don't know what it is, but it just doesn't. It's not satisfying some need for me right now, whereas it usually very much does. And so I've been listening to music, reading a lot of biographies, and almost no fiction. And I do not know the psychological underpinnings of that. I hope I get back into it. But for right now, yeah, I'm staying away from it.
Well, whatever works.
Oh, exactly. Know? If it works, it works.
Yeah, media-wise for me, I used to read up until March of this year. I used to read very broadly, and I started to stutter out after about a month or two. And now I've descended into reading almost entirely horror novels, which is if anybody in the audience knows my work, I write about as warm-heartedly as possible. Anytime I try to write a horror thing, it winds up being sweet instead. But I love to consume it. I just don't produce it. But there's a unique catharsis for me in consuming horror media. I've started doing 2 nights a week watching horror movies with different groups of friends over Discord. I've been going back through Pseudopod's archives. They're an excellent horror magazine that does podcast versions and very well produced podcasts of all of their stories. Also, Nightmare Magazine does with a few narrators, does fantastic audio versions of their stories, going back through those archives. And otherwise, I've been trying to like deliberately construct my Discord conversations, because I very quickly got tired of everybody sits around and talks about how much they hate being in their house for the entire call. I had that call 10 times. I was really good by the 11th. And so I've started to like contrive things like everybody we construct a tournament of the best action movies, and you must we'll go down, and Ace, you pick between these two, then Raven, you pick these two. And so every week a group of old friends and I get together on Discord to create the most arbitrary tournament of champions where no taste is consequential. And it is a grounding to have a good time talking to people. And that has been a real boon for the self-care front.
That's great. And I did want to say, Raven, over on the Discord, people were the cats, which aren't from Earth. Someone made it. They're loving that, by the way.
Yes.
So, one of the one of the things though is have you found any strategies that maybe you could share with other people, writers and artists, for overcoming the challenges of creating stuff during these times? Anything that you think may help others?
Well, two of the things that I've done is the writing group that I'm a member of that used to meet in person, we've switched over to meeting on Zoom. And that way we can still have our little, 15 minutes of chat and then 30 minutes of writing, 15 minutes of chat, 30 minutes of writing, and get something done. The other thing that I've done is bribe myself. And bribing yourself works really well, but you have to actually follow it. So if I write 500 words, I get to go spend 20 minutes, watching a video on YouTube. Or if I write this short story and I finish it this week, then maybe I go buy a t-shirt on a website that I like that's supporting a small artist or, small business. Things where I can support others are great, but also reward myself for working when I don't want to be working right now because my brain wants to be freaking out. Find what bribery you need and use that to bribe yourself.
That's good. No, that's good. Other suggestions from people?
Lists have been really big for me. I think especially when you're like living in a day-to-day where the world around you doesn't feel like it's changing very much, especially if you're not leaving the house, it can be really easy to forget how much you've accomplished in a day or a week. And sometimes just the act of even writing those things down. And even, especially from a disability standpoint, giving myself the kind of the kudos for things like, I managed to get up, take a shower, and put my clothes and my makeup on today. Like, that's a huge energy expenditure, and that gets to go on the list. And at the end of the day or the end of the week, there turns out to be a lot that I've accomplished. And it's satisfying, and it makes me feel less hard on myself when I'm able to look back at those lists.
Yeah, I keep lists like that as well. I mean, I have for at least the last 2 years.
Yeah, me too. It's a great solution, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, not only do I have my commitments, my own art commitments, whether it's commissions or client work. I also run a project called the Bird Whisperer Project, where everybody is welcome to draw a bird from a reference photo we have each month. So I'm also organizing that. And then I'm also helping to manage the Changeling Art Collective. And so and I have a Patreon that is for my graphite art and my poetry. So yeah, having the lists helps me see what I've done. It also reminds me that, I have deadlines.
Yeah.
Deadlines really help. And yes, the world is in chaos, but I actually still have to make money.
Yep. Bill's got to get paid.
Yeah. So it's right now I'm thinking about, I'm the artist guest of honor at Paticon that's in Chattanooga, Tennessee in January, if we have it. I know that there's a possibility that a January con might not happen. I still have those art commitments. So, I'm thinking about those, I'm planning those out, and working on commissions, and yeah. And, but still I give myself a break if I'm having a day where it's just not working. I don't stress myself out even more if it's a bad day.
Great.
I will say one of the ways that I cope, and I mentioned this briefly before we came on, was that, I find social media to be extremely draining, emotionally draining, because it's not just, everybody is upset and everybody is at home, especially my fan base. A lot of them are at home, and they are rightly so complaining about the world and the state of things. But I find that if I'm taking all of that in and not taking a step back, it clouds my mind and I can't get anything done. It's paralyzing. So I set up schedules where it's like, okay, I look at Twitter and Facebook at this time, and then later on in the day I'll jump in to check this. Otherwise I shut it off, and just give myself a break from the constant stream of chaos,
misery.
Yes. Yeah.
No, that's good. John Madai?
What has been really helpful to me is like obsessive, frantic, unedited journaling, I guess you call it, but it's like, stream of consciousness writing, I guess, has been really, really helpful. It's never been helpful in the past, particularly, but during this period of my life, I don't know, it's been a huge boon. Yeah, that's been great for me.
John?
So I think that Amanda makes good points about how social media can be toxic, but my greatest tools have actually been social media. And I would like to just talk about my approach, which has been in the many periods of my life where I've had to be more physically isolated from other people for my health or for other reasons. I will ramp up becoming more comfortable on social media and talk more about my work, whether it is that I'm having a slow day or a high productivity day or an unusual day. Like there was one day where my car basically bricked and I had to go to the Toyota dealership and was terrified of going inside. So I just brought my own chair. And then when I was there, I just decided I'm going to take some photographs of myself working on my laptop on a chair outside the Toyota dealership and goof around, but also normalize working in unusual circumstances. And that got a rise out of some people, and it inspired, and I got some responses from people who felt more like working on their thing when they saw me working on my thing in the shadow of a garage. But it also normalizes to myself that this productivity is part of my public routine as opposed to just being my private routine. And then also I'll say that especially during the pandemic, but usually in times of hardship, I try to make my own social media presence at least 25% funnier. I try to be just put a little bit more levity into people's Twitter feeds and Facebook feeds. Not that I will stray from, let's say, fighting for the post office, but I feel like I have to try to make it a little less dire. And in doing so, just the performance of it, there is an emotional kickback that I find very helpful to me spiritually.
Yeah, that's good though that you're able to do that. I don't use social media in that way. So obviously, it just doesn't work for me in that way. But yeah. It's good. And that's a point too, is that, we're talking about all these different coping mechanisms and, people just have to find what works for them.
Exactly. And like someone said earlier, everybody's got a different life and different challenges and different things that can either help or impede their creativity. And it can change day by day. So, you know, like I was just writing down all the suggestions and thoughts everybody had here. And one day, one of those, like John, I'm sitting going, okay, one day making my social media funny or maybe just what I need. Another day, it may be journaling or anything. So, or the bribing or the rewarding, you know, so it can change day by day, even for each person. Looks like Ace it must have gotten disconnected. Hello again. We did have a question from the audience I was going to throw out there. They were talking about basically during this period and probably for the coming months, our society and people are going through a very stressful, mega stress time. How do you think that will percolate down into new ideas and creativity in the years to come? You know, or I mean, that's what the question is, just throwing it out there. Any thoughts?
I think I say yes. I mean, what shape that will take, you know, is always hard to say, but I think that anytime we survive something, it changes us.
Mm.
And with that change is going to come new ideas. I'm not, well, and I say that because I'm no stranger to that. I had cancer as a teenager, and it changed my life. Yeah, it changed me. And then my mother had cancer last year, and that changed me and changed somewhat the direction I started to begin to take with my art and my writing. But yeah, I mean, I think that will probably happen, and it will be interesting to see where it goes and what people are creating.
Agreed.
I think it will for sure. Yesterday I moderated a panel on the future of urban fantasy in regards to, quarantine. And, when you think about how much our society has changed, from more places working from home, places deciding to continue to do that even after COVID, people using delivery options. Again, people realizing all the things that a lot of disabled people have already been doing. And now the able people are going, oh, hey, this is a thing I can do. But then looking also at the fact that our society will continue to change. How much political change will we see from this? A lot of things depending on what happens in November. And so that can't help but weave its way into writing. It may not for everybody here on the panel, but enough people, I think, will find those changes irresistible to, not bring into their writing in some manner, especially in spec fic, because we're constantly writing about what we think the future looks like.
Yeah.
Others?
For me, I've been thinking about a lot about what this is going to produce, and it makes me think of the Great Depression and how art was affected by the Great Depression. I think that might be it's hard to say, but I think that might be the historical event that's closest to this one, although it's arguable. And what happened then generally is you had great works of art that reflected what was going on, such as the Grapes of Wrath and whatnot. But, mass culture was mostly concentrated on comedies, musicals, the birth of Disney. People wanted to watch, cartoons. They wanted to watch screwball comedies. They wanted to watch Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers and see the myth of opulence. Whatever art is created by this pandemic, I'm sure some of it will reflect really what's going on, and a lot of it will be escapist and lovely, and dreamy. I really want to see what this, and I like those things, by the way. I really want to see what this creates. I think it will create some great art, and I think we're due for that. We're due for a kind of cultural renaissance, and I hope this will help it, actually.
Yeah. Ace Tilton, it looks like was having some difficulties, is connecting back in. I did want to, we have about 6 minutes here before we have the hard cutoff, and they will cut us off. Any closing thoughts on all this from people?
Be kind to yourself.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
If possible, be kind to others.
Yes.
Yes, on that too.
If possible, you know, tell them that you liked their novel, tell them that you liked their short story, tweet it out, post on Facebook. I just read this and I like it. Fiction, all works of art could use all the boosting they can get right now, and every creator could use a reminder that their work is valuable to people. And you know, and everybody listening to this knows that there's at least one artist who has seriously helped keep them alive in the last several months.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel incredibly privileged to be living during the deluge of high quality work. So that'd be my thing, is because Amanda's right, and that's my chapter 2.
Both of you are right. No, both. I wrote both of those down because they go together. You can't have one without the other, in my opinion.
If you can support people, do so. Buy a book, buy a piece of art, buy something from somebody's Etsy, go to our dealer's room, into Discord. They're starving down there, guys. They are. Go check out what they have. Support them if you can, because we're all suffering from the lack of conventions.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The artists as well. You know, down in the art show channel. I mean,
that too. Yes.
I had one event this year in January, and then that was it.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. So.
And wear your masks,
please.
Yes, please.
John Madai?
Yeah, I think those are all good suggestions, to be kind to yourself and be kind to others, and I can't really expand on that.
And I know Ace is still trying to reconnect. But any other thoughts before we I don't see any other questions coming in. So any other final thoughts?
Not particularly, just thank you for joining us and being here. You guys have had a lot of good questions.
Yeah, it's been good.
I really also thanks to the folks who run NASFiC for making something like this that allows creatives and audiences to connect safely right now. All events no event like this is easy to do.
No.
And I really appreciate all of the hard work that is going on behind the scenes. You can see less of the hard work that goes into making this convention than any convention you've ever been to, because unfortunately the creators are mostly invisible. But my God, it's Herculean. Hi, Ace.
Yep.
Welcome back.
Hey. Hold on.
I shut up just in time to say bye.
Well, no, actually, Ace, it's perfect. We were just giving final comments, final thoughts on this. Do you have any final thoughts?
Yes. Everybody wear your masks so we can go back outside.
Yes.
What they said.
That's my thing now. I have no sympathy if you're not wearing your mask. And you know what? It's because, you know, it's one of the most selfish things you can do. I just don't get it.
And don't forget to vote. That's the other one.
Yep.
Well, yes, that too. But thank you, everybody, for joining us. Unless there's any final questions, I'm just double checking. I don't see any final questions. So, yeah, I guess we're kind of just, looks like, I think Ace froze again.
That about sums up 2020, right?
I know. Well, you know what? It's 2020. I don't know what I was telling someone earlier today. I think 2020 is going to be our shorthand for just something horrible. 10 years from now, we're going to be like, oh, that's horrible. That's so 2020. So,
yep.
But it's great talking to all of you. Thank you. And keep surviving. Keep doing well.
You too. Thank you.
Hey, take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.